Although all smartphones can play games, not all smartphones are gaming phones. Today, we're going to review the brand new Redmagic 6 and the Redmagic 6 Pro. Now, Redmagic has been providing us some of the latest, greatest specifications for years now. So obviously we have the 888, we have 165 Hz refresh rate on a 1080p panel on a smartphone. That again is faster than the display that I have at the top behind me. One thing to keep in mind, this is something that gaming phones give you. It's a tailored experience to give you the best gaming experience on a smartphone to be able to play it at home, outdoors, and anywhere. So let's not waste any time. My name is TK. This is the Redmagic 6. Sabaho everybody. Let's go ahead and get into the review of the Redmagic 6 and the Redmagic 6 Pro. Like and subscribe, and make sure you hit that bell icon so that you're always notified to whenever we have new videos on the channel. So here we have the Redmagic 6, and again, keep in mind the Redmagic 6 Pro has a few differences than what we have here. The package that was sent to me from Redmagic included the brand new Redmagic dual cooler or dual core cooler, essentially a cooler that has two built-in fans, some RGB lights, powered by a USB cable, and of course sits on the back of the phone to cool the smartphone or the back of the phone itself. Now, Redmagic has been known obviously for phones that have intake and outtake openings here, as well as a built-in fan to cool the CPU, and this is obviously going to be the standard edition. The Redmagic 6 and the Redmagic 6 Pro are both available directly from Redmagic's website. Please check the link in the description below. We have a customizable RGB light, so once we turn them on, there's two LED lights here, as well as the logo that lights up. And of course, we have a triple camera setup, of course, here dual tone LED flash, no wireless charging, but the battery here is about a 5050 milliampere battery that is capable of receiving up to 66 watt charging speed. The international model will include a 30 watt charger or 33 watt charger. The 10 cent edition model, which is what this one is, will include a 66 watt charger. You're able to buy a separately 66 watt charger directly from Redmagic's website. But it is also going to be supporting Power Delivery 3 and Quick Charge 3 through 5 if you have devices. So those chargers are going to be definitely very flexible. As far as the cameras that we have on the back, we have a primary shooter that's a 64 megapixel camera sensor. It's same thing on the Pro, an 8 megapixel sensor for ultra wide, and of course a 2 megapixel going to be a macro lens. On the front, we have a single sensor. It's going to be an 8 megapixel sensor that gives us the experience there. The display is very nice. The processor power here, again, on both the 6 and the 6 Pro is going to be the Snapdragon 888, and of course the Adreno 660. As far as the configuration, there's two different versions, right? The 6 will have 12 gigs of RAM with 128 gigs of internal storage. The Pro will go up to 16 gigabytes of RAM with 256 gigs of internal storage. Both are going to be supporting UFS 3.1 with LPDDR5 for the RAM and storage configuration. So already, right off the bat, we're already talking about the latest and greatest on the market. The display is a 6.8-inch 1080p panel that is rated to go all the way up to 165 Hz. And you can definitely see it right there at the top, and we'll talk about some of those options as well. It does also feature up to 500 Hz of touch sampling, so basically the response rate here is very, very high. So we have a 3.5mm headphone jack sitting here next to one of the microphones. On the right of the device, we have the out vent, the power button, and one of the microphones. On the bottom, we have a bottom firing speaker, USB-C, the other microphone, and a dual SIM slot supporting 5G. Although the 10 cent edition does not support the US 5G, the international model should be able to. On the left side, we have the gaming mode trigger, the intake valve, and of course the volume rocker. In-display fingerprint sensor, as well as AI front-facing camera unlock, so we can go ahead and unlock the device. Of course, it works perfectly. And of course, you're able to use navigation, or you can use just basically standard button, recent, home, or back. I have one of their themes installed, and definitely works very nice. The experience that you're getting here is Android 11 out of the box. And as you can see, we have right there, the 12 gigs of RAM, 128, Android 11 on the box with Redmagic OS version 4. There's been a couple of updates that they pushed out. And again, as I mentioned, in the US right now, I'm carrying with 4G with HD audio on it. So no 5G in the current version because, again, I'm running the 10 cent edition. Now, even though this is the 10 cent edition, the folks over at Redmagic gave me the global edition or the global ROM. That's why we have the Google Play Store preloaded. Everything will work exactly as when you're picking it up as an international model. The cameras, again, as I mentioned, the front-facing and back-facing cameras will give us different experiences. We can go all the way up to 8K video with 24 frames per second on the back and up to 1080p 60 frames per second on the front. And we'll get into that a little bit in that experience. Now, to jump into gaming, all you have to do is literally flip a switch, and that takes you into the gaming mode. Now, by default, it automatically turns on the fan as well as turns on the RGBs. The RGBs are sitting in the back. You click the button and it turns them on, and you'll be able to see the pulsating light, and you're also able to customize it. The fans do turn on, and when they do turn on, as I mentioned, air goes in if you're looking at the phone from the top from the right, and go out from the left. So if you're considering using the air cooler, make sure that you do not cover these experiences. So never ever put it over the sensor. although where this is 90% of where the heat is going to be generating. So it's intended to basically sit in the center of the phone, and of course it doesn't matter which position you put in, since you have two fans, and both will generate the amount of air cooling similar to our PC to cool our smartphone. What I wanted to mention though is one thing. These actually can provide a decent amount of cooling effect, as I'm showing you guys right now, just by using them automatically. So when I first turned it on without actually plugging it in, and of course it gave me about like 70 degrees. That was the temperature of the surface area here, and we're able to drop it into the 50s. And so imagine how much cooling this is able to provide to your smartphone whenever you're trying to play long duration game sessions. All your games will be listed in here in a carousel style. You have a profile where you can customize the different areas of the gaming experience, of course turning on and turning off to turbo fans, and by default it turns on to low. There is two modes, a much higher one and a lower one. For zero lag gaming, of course, you're going to be using the headphone jack. Otherwise, you're pretty much just going to be able to jump into any game that you want. We'll go ahead and start there. And the last thing before the game finishes loading, we still have the two air triggers that are present here with up to 400 hertz of touch response. So definitely an improvement there. We do have NFC. Once we get into the game, we can swipe from the right side and it takes us directly into a shortcut menu. We can control the brightness level, automatic, CPU, GPU performance. We can jump into the actual performance enhancement, either auto mode, GPU turbo, CPU turbo, or even super performance, which essentially is just overclocking everything to the max. The main benefit here that we get is the ability of also turning on and disabling the shoulder triggers. So in this situation, I already have them turned on. I have them configured for basically aiming and firing directly within PUBG. I can also sense the touch sensitivity or set it to be either low, normal, or high, depending on the game and depending on what you want to be able to do. Keep in mind that you can reconfigure them anytime you want by just, again, within the game when you're playing, hitting them up and then reassigning them to where you need to. You can see right there I have the frame rates, and I also have the display running at 165 hertz. Although PUBG as a game for me only ran around 40 hertz, or essentially 40 frames per second as a maximum with the highest quality. So just depending on the game, that will set the frame rate. I give it to 165 so that it at least goes to the maximum possible by the set game, depending if the company has whitelisted this or not. We have screen recording, 4D shock, and of course we have charge separation, which is something that is very unique to what we used to see on Sony devices. And that was the ability of running your phone to actually use external power without actually charging the battery, reducing heat. So for extended gaming session, charge separation is definitely very nice. They call it HS power control over on Sony devices. Here it's present directly on the Redmagic 6. Block messages, of course, last thing is Super Snap, and of course display. And then last but not least, here on the bottom we have game space as well as back. So if I'm done with everything here, I want to go back to the game space, pick up another game, we can jump in. Otherwise I can jump in here, configure everything, and of course all of this stuff will work exactly the same on any other game. And understanding, of course, we'll be able to remember this by game. So here on the game enhancements, it'll remember it for whichever game you're able to run it on. Overall, the performance on here is actually very nice. Once you're done with this mode, you flip the switch back, it takes you back to the standard launcher, and that's something to keep in mind. The two experiences are independent from each other, and you do need to switch the setting on for you to switch over. You can go in there and customize some of the options for the RGBs in the back to customize them for notifications. So it's called the light strip setting. And of course, you can go in there and customize them, either breathing, solid light, Neo AI, basically the Neo Speed, smart game. Those are for the game enhancement options as well. Lock screen always on display, as you can imagine. It's a 1080p OLED panel, so it gives us the best of both worlds. I'm running it on the latest version of the software and the latest, of course, experience. The cameras, as I mentioned to you guys, we have a triple camera setup on the back, a single camera on the front. We'll be able to basically shoot all the way up to 4K or 8K actually video on the back-facing sensor. So let's go ahead and go into the settings tab. You can see here the maximum resolution is 8K at 24 frames per second. We do have 4K 60 as well as 1080p 60, standard 4K 30, and of course just 1080p and 720 as well. The codec by default is the H.264. You can actually switch over to the 265 or HDR10 if you'd like. Sharing with you guys the front-facing and back-facing video experience on the Redmagic 6 and the Redmagic 6 Pro. Starting off with the front-facing camera on the brand new Redmagic 6, we have 1080p, basically 30 frames per second, not even 60 frames per second. That's going to be the maximum on the front. But when we switch over to the back-facing sensor, we actually have some pretty decent options, all the way up to 8K, 4K 60, and even 4K 60 stabilized footage. Let's go ahead and switch over to there. Now I'm recording at 4K 60 frames per second primarily because I feel like 8K is not really a very functional, I would say, resolution to share with people. Large files, and of course it's going to just basically be hard for us to transfer content at that resolution. So what you're seeing right now is just a sample from earlier in the day where it was actually a little bit windier than now, and of course you can get to see what the quality of the 8K that comes out of the Redmagic 6. Now, we also have 4K 60 frames per second, standard and stabilized. They do basically crop in a little bit on the sensor, so it's a little bit more punched in. I would say a little harder to use than what we're using right now, but this should be a good example of the front-facing and the back-facing sensor, again, for audio and video. Now, when it comes down to the Redmagic 6 and 6 Pro, some of the main differences, obviously, is the fact that the backing, or the material that they're using on the back, is going to be different on the Redmagic 6 Pro. It's going to be more conducive to heat dissipation as what we get with the Redmagic 6, although both of them are going to be featuring the intake fan, as well as, well, the intake valve here to the fan, as well as the ability of using the cooler, the dual cooler that you can use. The Redmagic 6 Pro also will have additional RAM and additional internal storage to have the Pro version variant of this device. But as far as NFC, all the other benefits and features are going to be pretty much the exact same configuration. Now, as far as the audio, let's go ahead and play some music real quick just to kind of get the experience there and how does it actually stack up with the stereo speakers. And here we are with our favorite song, Alex Quindo, Jumbo by NCS Release.
Jack it up.
Definitely sounds nice, and of course the ability of using it for calls and everything else is going to sound just as well. Phone calls was actually pretty good, even though I don't have all the bands supported here, but at least T-Mobile for me, I'm able to get 4G, and again, I'm able to use all of it. As far as the performance, just for benchmarks purposes, I ran a couple of tests here. Running the benchmark by itself without actually jumping into the game mode, we were getting 1076 with 3564. When we run it directly within the game mode on auto mode, we were running on 1112, 35 to 18, and of course when we run it here with turbo, it did go up a little bit on the multi-core, but the single core dropped a little. So overall, I recommend just basically playing it directly within the gaming mode, either auto or with basically performance turned on. You'll get the same experience. As far as the compute, the OpenCL, we went up from 4600 to 4686, 4685, again, with and without the turbo, but the experience is very nice. This device will not disappoint. The fastest internal storage, display, and everything. Let's go ahead and jump in real quick to some of the games that I was able to run there. Keep an eye on the actual frame rate that's present on the left side of the display, as you can see exactly all of the performances that we're talking about here.
Next whistle in 10 seconds. Hardpoint contested. Hardpoint identified. What do we have here?
So as you saw there, gaming on the smartphone is not going to have any problems. Overall, we're going to get the maximum allowed frame rate by the developer. So essentially, as long as the developer whitelists the game, we should be able to get the best performance. As far as you can see right now with the chart, we're getting about 40 frames per second when it comes down to, PUBG at max settings. Obviously, you can get a little bit better when you reduce the quality. Call of Duty with max settings, everything 90 frames per second, solid performance. Dead Trigger 2, we're able to go all the way to 120, and it actually did go a little bit higher depending on the experience. Last but not least, of course, some of the racing games you're able to go all the way to 165. So it really does depend on the developer, and of course the hardware is there ready for that. So from a sense of future-proofing, you're definitely going to always get the best performance because the hardware can go to 165 Hertz, which is something that is already much, much faster than any of the other smartphones on the market right now. Now, when it comes down to performance and cooling in gaming, long gaming sessions are going to be great because you're able to keep the device cooled with a built-in fan, and of course using the dual accessory option here that they provide us, which enables us to actually have even better cooling, as this actually provides very good cooling on the system. Although keep in mind that it doesn't actually cool the processor, because that's actually mostly sitting right behind the camera sensor, and that already actually has its built-in fan. So if you put this on the left side of the smartphone, you end up blocking the built-in fan system. So overall, cooling is definitely a main focus for the smartphone, and you're not going to be disappointed. And if you definitely want to be able to charge your phone while you're using it, you can always use that power separation option within the settings in the gaming system that enables you to actually separate the power and only allow it to run the phone but not charge the battery. Again, keeping you going without actually increasing temperatures on the smartphone. So big kudos there on the work that they've done for thermal management, but also providing us great cooling capabilities. Now, converse that over to content consumption. Great large 6.8 OLED panel that gives us the ability of using 1080p video with the great stereo speakers, zero latency headphones. Obviously, if you want to be able to use wired connection, there's absolutely not going to be a problem. And again, 5,000 milliampere battery, it's more than enough for any extended amount of usage. Now, when it comes down to the cameras, I'll probably say that this is definitely not the biggest focus of the smartphone, although it does actually provide a decent experience. So what I'm trying to say is, if you're going into this expecting it to be like the best camera on the market and the best smartphone in the market and everything, I don't think that that's what Redmagic is focusing on. They're focusing on a great content consumption, great movie consumption, obviously, as well as gaming smartphone with great thermals, great capabilities of, the triggers on the side are obviously a big iconic thing of Redmagic. And of course, those are the things that you're going to get the best experience on. Cameras are going to work, and they're going to give you, obviously, decent for taking pictures here and there, videos and so on. Again, 8K recording and 1080p on the front. There's not really much to really complain, but I wanted to set your expectations correctly. This is a gaming and content consumption device. So essentially focused on that experience the most, and everything else works, but it's just not to the same level. So as long as you get in with that, you should be great. Last thing we're going to talk about, obviously, is this a buy or not buy from me? And at the end of the day, I actually would say definitely a buy. If you're looking for a gaming smartphone, great content consumption, watching movies, being on Zoom calls, all of the things that we normally want to do, I feel like the Redmagic 6 and the 6 Pro, with the slightly better specifications from the storage and the RAM, as well as the materials on the back, to allow us to actually have better heat dissipation, which is definitely always needed whenever it comes down to the 888 or even any gaming phone, since we tend to drive them a little bit harder than standard smartphones for longer durations. So gaming can typically go from anywhere 30 minutes to 2 hours, where when we're watching a movie, unless you're watching a long movie, which again doesn't push the CPU as much, it's not the same experience. So this is definitely going to give you a great experience when it comes down to cooling. And if you do want to pick up that extra accessory for the dual fans, I think that's definitely very nice, and it will work with other smartphones as well. So definitely a buy from me. Like and subscribe as usual. Thank you very much for the support. Please let me know in the comments below, what do you guys think of this video, and of course as the Redmagic 6 and the 6 Pro. I'll see you in the next one.